You think you know this one already. 2 pizza-stained desks, a door turned into a table, a kid with a crooked smile shipping books out of a garage in Seattle, and boom, world's richest man. That's the story. That's the bedtime story. And it's a lie wearing a cardigan. Welcome back. I'm your host. And today we're doing financial forensics on the single most over-mythologized fortune of the modern age. Because the garage didn't make Jeff Bezos rich. The garage made a good headline. Here's the actual claim, and I'm planting my flag in it. Jeff Bezos did not get rich selling books, did not get rich on a salary, and frankly, barely got rich on profit. He got rich on one stubborn decision to never sell the thing he built, while everyone around him screamed at him to sell. His whole empire is basically a man hugging a stock certificate through a hurricane and refusing to let go. That's the metaphor we're riding all episode, so buckle in. The fortune is the grip, and everything else is the storm trying to peel his fingers off one by one. Let's start with the salary, because the salary is genuinely the funniest number in American business. Jeff Bezos' annual Amazon salary is about $81,840. 81 grand. I want you to sit in that for a second. The man with a net worth flirting with $300 billion makes less on paper than a mid-level dentist with a boat he's behind on. But surely, says the guy in my comments who has never read a proxy statement, that's just the base. He's got bonuses, stock grants, a private jet allowance shaped like a rocket. No, $81,840 year after year. And that is the entire on-paper income. If salary were the grip, his fingers would have slipped off the cliff in 1998. So where's the money? The money is the shares. Hold that thread. We're checking back on it. First, rewind. Because the origin story everybody skips is the one that actually matters. Before the garage, before any of it, Bezos was a Wall Street guy. From 1990 to 1994, he worked at a hedge fund called D.E. Shaw, and by the age of 30, he was a senior vice president. Read that again. Senior vice president of a quantitative hedge fund by 30. This is not a scrappy book-loving everyman who stumbled into commerce. This is a finance assassin who looked at the early internet and ran the math. And the moment he leaves is pure him. He describes what he later called a regret minimization framework, which is a fancy MBA way of saying he asked himself one question. When I'm 80, will I regret leaving Wall Street? No. Will I regret missing the beginning of the internet? Yes. Beautiful. Genuinely a great way to make a decision. Also the kind of thing you can only say out loud when you already have a senior vice president's bank account cushioning the fall. But sure, let's frame quitting a cushy job to start a company as a heroic leap into the void. Very Frodo of you. He founds Amazon in 1994. Now here's the part. The garage myth quietly buries under a stack of cardboard. In 1995, Jeff's parents, Jackie and Mike Bezos, invested $245,573 into Amazon. That is not a metaphor for love. That is a wire transfer. $250,000 of mom and dad's money. And I want to flag, this is real, because it's the kind of detail that gets sanded off the inspirational version. Bezos himself told his parents there was about a 70% chance they'd lose all of it. 70%. He looked his own mother in the eye and said, this is more likely than not to torture money, and she wired it anyway. His siblings each put in around 10 grand too. Picture that family dinner. How's the company? Jeff. Statistically, cooked. Pass the potatoes. So before a single book ships, the grip already exists. And it's gripping a seed pile of family money that the founder openly graded as a coin flip with the coin weighted against you. That's not failure. That's just where the storm starts. Next gust, the venture capital. In 1996, a famous firm called Kleiner Perkins invested $8 million for about 13% of the company. Quick translation, because some of you hear venture capital and your eyes glaze. This is professional investors buying a slice of equity. Equity just meaning the percentage of the company you own. $8 million for 13% implies the whole company was worth around $60 million. $60 million. Hold that number. It's about to look adorable. Then comes the moment everybody thinks is the finish line and is actually the starting gun. The 1997 IPO. An IPO, initial public offering, is just the first time a company sells its shares to the public. Amazon's IPO raised $54 million, and the total market value of the company, the market cap, share price times all the shares, was about $438 million. Now here's where the grip pays off. At that IPO, Bezos owned about 41% of Amazon. 41% of $438 million is real money, but it is not generational money. It's a nice house and a nicer car. The fortune doesn't exist yet. The fortune is a promise, and then the storm tries to rip his hand off. Watch the company itself for a second, because the books are insane. Revenue, the money coming in, went from $148 million in 1997 to $1.6 billion in 1999. Explosive growth, looks unstoppable, looks like a fairy tale. And then put it next to profit, which is the part nobody wants to print. In the year 2000, Amazon posted a net loss of $1.41 billion. Not a typo. Lost $1.5 billion in a single year. The company that supposedly made him rich was for years, a money incinerator with a smile logo. Now I want to drop you inside the worst of it, because this is the peak of the storm and you should feel it, not just hear it. It's late 2000. You're holding Amazon stock. You watch the screen and the price is about $113. You feel like a genius. Then it ticks down. Then it doesn't stop. 90, 60, 40, 20. The dot-com crash is vaporizing the entire internet, and your one little smile company is bleeding out in public. Every analyst on cable narrating your funeral, until that $113 share is sitting at about $6. That's a roughly 95% collapse. 95% of the value, gone. Your net worth turned into a rumor of itself. Your wrist is screaming. The wind is at full howl. And every reasonable person on earth is telling you to let go and at least keep what's left. And Bezos just tightens his grip. He doesn't sell. He goes on the record in 2000 and says, "We're a company that wants to be weighed, and over time we will be," which is a poet's way of saying laugh now, nerds. That's the whole fortune right there, by the way. Not the books. Not the garage. That one refusal to open his hand at the worst possible moment. Okay, surface for air. Undercut incoming. It's very easy to hold a stock through a 95% crash when your salary is a separate $81,000 and your worst case is moving back in with the parents who already lost the bet once. Just saying. Now the company finally proves it's not vapor. Revenue keeps climbing through the crash, $3.9 billion in 2002. And then in 2003, a miracle. Amazon posts its first full-year profit ever, $35 million, off $5.3 billion in revenue. Let me check on our subplot for a sec, the profit thread, because it's been quietly humiliating itself this whole time. After nearly a decade, the first annual profit is $35 million on over $5 billion in sales. That's an operating margin that rounds to a rounding error. If Amazon were a restaurant, it spent 10 years feeding the entire neighborhood for free and finally cleared enough to buy a used Honda. And the market loved it, because the grip was never about profit. The grip was about scale, and the storm was about to hand him the one thing that turned the whole bet from bold to obscene. 2006. AWS launches. Amazon Web Services, the cloud, which is just renting out computing power and storage to other businesses over the internet. The invisible plumbing under half the apps on your phone right now. Bezos took the giant server farm Amazon built to survive its own holiday traffic and went, what if we rented the empty closet to everyone else? Steelman, the dumb-sounding move. A bookstore deciding to become the landlord of the internet sounds insane, until you realize it's the highest margin landlord in human history. Let me put the receipts side by side, and I'll just read the numbers and let you do the murder yourself. In 2023, Amazon's total net sales were $574.8 billion, and total operating income, profit from core operations before interest and taxes, was $36.9 billion. Now the breakdown by segment, which is just the company splitting its profit by business unit in its filings. North America did $352.8 billion in revenue and made $14.9 billion in operating income. International did $131.2 billion in revenue and lost $2.7 billion. The actual store, the thing with your name and address on the box, is a margin nightmare. And then AWS, $90.8 billion in revenue and $24.6 billion in operating income. Read it again. The cloud was about 16% of revenue and roughly 2/3 of the profit. The bookstore is the costume. The cloud is the body. Bezos didn't get rich selling you a phone charger and a yoga mat. He got rich renting servers to the company that sells you the yoga mat. Strawman in the back goes, so the retail thing was pointless? No. The retail thing was the disguise that let him build the server farm at planetary scale, which is the whole con, and it's beautiful. Now zoom out on the market cap, because this is the storm finally calming and the grip finally being weighed, exactly like he promised. 1997, $438 million. 2008, about $54 billion. 2018, about $900 billion. 2024, over $2 trillion. From $400 million to $2 trillion. And here's the punchline, the salary set up 40 minutes ago. Bezos' ownership slid from about 41% at IPO to 14.1% when he stepped down as CEO in 2021, all the way to about 9% by 2025. His slice of the pizza got way smaller, but the pizza became the size of a continent. 9% today is more than 900 million shares, worth somewhere near $200 billion. 9% of $2 trillion is the entire fortune. The grip held. The storm passed. The hand was full. Quick objection pivot before someone screams it. But he sells stock all the time? Doesn't that break the grip? Sort of. And this is the genius of the late game. Bezos has sold more than $50 billion of Amazon shares since 2002, including about $20 billion in 2020 in 2021 and over $13 billion in 2024. But that's not panic selling. That's peeling off a few fingers on purpose now that the cliff is gone to fund his rocket company, Blue Origin, into which he's committed to pumping about $1 billion of stock a year and has already poured an estimated 10 to 20 billion. He's selling slivers of a thing so big that selling 13 billion in a year is the rich man equivalent of finding change in the couch. And then 2019 happens, and the grip almost gets cut in half by a divorce. In the divorce, Mackenzie Scott received 25% of Bezos' Amazon shares, worth about $36 to $38 billion at the time. A quarter of his whole stake, gone. The single biggest hand ever pried open in one move. Except, plot twist, he kept voting control over those shares. She got the value. He kept the steering wheel. The man will let go of $36 billion in money before he'll let go of 1% of control over the company. If that doesn't tell you what the grip was actually about, nothing will. In 2021, he hands the CEO job to Andy Jassy, the guy who ran AWS, naturally, and slides into executive chairman, which is a title that means I still own the place. I'm just done answering emails. So let's line up the whole arc one more time, fast. Net worth, $10.1 billion in 1999, $112 billion in 2018, about $290 billion in 2026. Salary the whole time, $81,840. Source of the actual money, not the salary, not the books, not even the profit for the first decade. But one finance guy who quit a hedge fund, took a coin flip bet his own mom funded, refused to sell through a 95% crash, and then quietly turned a server closet into the most profitable utility on Earth. The garage is a great photo. The grip is the story. So the next time someone tells you Jeff Bezos got rich selling books out of a garage, you can smile, nod, and know the truth. He got rich by being the only guy in the room who wouldn't let go, while everyone else, including his terrified mother holding a 70% loss ticket, watched him hang on. And honestly, pass the potatoes. I'll see you in the next one.